Tonight, no signs of slowing down. Jack Smith, the newly named special counsel in the Trump investigations, is already reviewing and approving all the filings related to a key court hearing tomorrow. The hearing is related to the Mar-a-Lago classified documents criminal case. Our Caitlin Polans and Evan Perez also reporting tonight that prosecutors who will work under Smith haven't made major changes to their schedule in the next few weeks, which is when they were scheduled already to take witness testimony to collect documents under subpoena. One source saying, quote, the grand jury doesn't seem to have skipped a beat. This is a growing number of former top legal officials say that President Trump is headed for indictment.
At the end of the day, I expect that Donald Trump will be indicted by this special counsel.
I personally think that they probably have the basis for legitimately indicting the president.
Out front now, Ryan Goodman, former special counsel of the Department of Defense and co-editor-in-chief of the Just Security blog. And obviously, you and your colleagues just put out a 169-page sort of charging document and very clearly showing why you think indictment is appropriate in the Mar-a-Lago case. And there was worry, right? 72 hours ago, there was worry that appointing a special counsel for both the Mar-a-Lago case and the January 6th criminal case investigations would slow the whole thing down, slow roll the whole thing. We're 72 hours later. He's been briefed on everything. He's approving everything. The hearing's going ahead tomorrow. Evan and Caitlin are reporting that nothing's changed on the schedule. Nothing's been slowed down, it appears, thus far. So what are you seeing now?
So the reporting is consistent with his reputation, that he is this kind of a dogged prosecutor who's very quick and efficient. He's a triathlete in his other life, but it seems as though that's kind of an attitude that he takes to the work. And I do think that there were concerns before Garland's decision that it could slow things down in the abstract, having a special counsel. But the person is so important in the equation, and he's the kind of person that has obviously hit the ground running.
So it certainly seems that way. So now tomorrow's briefing, right? Jack Smith is now fully briefed on that, right? As I just said, approved everything, all the documents were ready. He certainly didn't get in and goes, hold on, let me wait a couple days while I read through it. No, boom, 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 we're going ahead. This hearing is about the document review of the Mar-a-Lago documents, right, that the special master is supposed to go through. That's what the hearing is regarding. And you believe that this hearing could be very telling at this point. How come?
So I think it could be telling in a certain sense. The government's position is very strong. There's almost like a menu of choices that the 11th Circuit has to uphold the government's case and then just allow them to proceed ahead and have Jack Smith have all of the evidence that was collected in the FBI search. I also think it's telling in other ways. The government is sticking with the same argument that they've had before, that there's no evidence of declassification of these documents, which is telling because they've now interviewed Kash Patel, who is the only person out there in the world who has said, other than Donald Trump, that he declassified material. The fact that they're still sticking to that argument post having Kash Patel before the grand jury, I think is a tell that they're pretty confident about that idea.
All right. So in terms of where it goes from here, this whole, okay, well, they clearly seem to have enough on the Mar-a-Lago case if they want to indict to do so. Then you've got January 6th as separate from that and more involved. From what you know about Jack Smith, when do you think we know?
I think we might have something very significant within the next couple months on Mar-a-Lago. I do think that that is a basis of facts that already provides for an indictment. So I think he's obviously somebody who's not going to slow down in that determination. And the big question is, does he move forward with one case if he feels like he has enough for an indictment, or does he wait for the other, which is the January 6th materials? And that could be a much more complex
And then you wait for both.
Right.
Right. Which, of course, then you have to run the risk of, leaks and people knowing what you have in the first one. So there's risk there, too. But fascinating. All right, Ryan, thank you very much.
I'm joined now by Harvard Law School professor Lawrence Tribe. He's also the co-author of To End a Presidency, The Power of Impeachment. Professor, great to see you tonight. We haven't had a chance to talk to you. What's your reaction to the appointment of the special counsel by the Attorney General?
I think it was the right move, although I had urged doing this many months ago in March. But more recently, I thought that because Merrick Garland was apparently not really ready to proceed, that he ought to pull things together and bring indictments. The evidence was clear enough, and I thought appointing a special counsel might delay things. He's clearly found a special counsel who won't delay a thing. He's hitting the ground running. He clearly has enormous experience. He's come right off of the war crimes trials that he's handling in Kosovo. He's been in charge of political corruption trials. He's battle hardened. He's absolutely ready. And Garland emphasized the need for speed. He's clearly not come back from The Hague in order to preside over the winding up of an unsuccessful investigation. The marching orders he has are to conclude things as quickly as possible. And I take that to mean a very likely set of indictments arising both out of Mar-a-Lago and the attempt to overturn the election.
Well, how complicated would it be, practically speaking, to bring indictments against a former president running for president, and to do it in a timely enough fashion that some aspect of the case wouldn't be bumping right up against a presidential election?
Well, the sooner the better, because the delays that are bound to be part of the former president's strategy will make it bump up against the election. But Merrick Garland is not going to let that deter him at all. He's made that clear. The fact that we have someone who thinks he can protect himself by claiming that he wants to be president, that's all fine, but it's not up to him. Interestingly, he said he doesn't intend to participate in the work of the special counsel. Well, that's nice. No one's asking him. It's not up to him. The special counsel has very broad power. The ultimate decision of whether and when to indict and for which of the many available charges is going to be up to Merrick Garland. But while he's running the entire Justice Department with 115,000 employees, hundreds of investigations all over the world, Garland can't be the person to handle the day-to-day decisions in this investigation and the prosecutions to which it will lead. And they don't need to be run up the totem pole through the bureaucracy of the Department of Justice, because the marching orders of this special counsel are to reach a conclusion as expeditiously and fairly as possible, put it on the Attorney General's desk. The Attorney General, I think, will look at it and have every reason to approve it. So I'm looking at the trials.
You brought up what the former president said. He would not partake in the investigation. Obviously, that isn't his choice. I mean, he is presumably the subject of this investigation, as is quite clear now by the appointment of a special counsel. What do you think his legal strategy will be going forward?
Delay, delay, and delay. That's all he's got going for him. I don't think he has any good defenses. At one point, he said he was going to defend against the charges of mishandling the top secret information by saying that it was no longer top secret. He had thought that he declassified it just by thinking that it was declassified, the telepathy defense. That's not going to get him anywhere. And with respect to the attempt to obstruct the transfer of power to President Biden leading up to the violent insurrection, originally, I think he was going to say, I didn't have much to do with it, I just made a speech. But now we know, as a result of the extraordinary work of the January 6th committee and a great deal else, we know that he was right in the middle of it. He was receiving all of the information. He was encouraging them to be violent at the Capitol. He was basically abandoning his own vice president to the gallows. There really is no good defense for any of it. The only reason he hasn't already been indicted is that Garland is trying, and I know he's always meticulous. When he was my student, he was extremely careful 50 years ago, 45 years ago, I guess. Anyway, he's trying to dot every I, cross every T. And now with the special counsel, I think he's got someone who is going to carry that out. And we'll see.
The Attorney General, no doubt, going to check his report card from 45 years ago. Professor Tribe, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.